I'm David Mohammed, Director of Digital Solutions at Apex Systems, and we're excited to be a part of the Triad Digital Conference virtual version. I'm going to talk today about building a design thinking culture within your organization and within your product design teams. So we're just going to get rolling here. So David Mohammed, I'm a passionate design leader and UX content strategist with mobile and web experience, and I practice empathetic, human-centered design thinking principles. I thought I'd share a short video with you about our approach at Apex.
All brands are struggling to figure out how to continue to transition from mostly baby boomers to millennials and Gen Zers. You're really kind of talking about the greatest demographic shift in American history. My name is David Mohammed, and I'm Director of Digital Solutions. Millennials and Gen Zers just consume media, digital media, a lot differently than, say, Gen Xers and baby boomers have done in the past. And they expect more from their brands from an experience perspective, and rightfully so. The smart companies are future-proofing against millennials and Gen Zers because they're going to bring their digital media consumption behaviors with them, the same way that baby boomers did when they were consuming print media and television. And they brought those behaviors with them. So we're just going to continue to see the whole society continue to shift. David Mohammed, Director of Digital Solutions. We are the Apex Advantage.
All right, really short. That video kind of highlights that there's a great demographic shift going on between millennials, Gen Zers, and baby boomers. And millennials and Gen Zers just have different digital media consumption behaviors than, say, baby boomers have had in the past as the largest generation. So companies and brands and organizations are in the process of future-proofing against those digital media consumption behaviors. And design thinking and experience design and customer experience are a big part of that. So that's kind of how we're framing up building a design thinking culture within your organization. So as for me, I've been in the space about 17 years, both working in digital agencies and on product design teams. I've worked on numerous global brands. I consider myself a product-driven thinker and doer. And over the last 17 years, I've headed up experience design and digital strategy and social strategy at several top agencies, as you can see on my career path. And I currently head up experience design, as I mentioned earlier, for Apex. And that's me with my Purple Rain shirt on. I'm a huge Prince fan. Some folks I've worked with over the years, across a smattering of industries and with some really top global brands. So let's talk about some key trends and some metrics around design thinking. So some key experience design trends, they're all around human-centered experience design. And as you know, human-centered experience design is really trying to help people using your experience reach their goals, while at the same time helping to reach organizational goals that you have set for the experience. And some of the big ticket items around trends in experience design are omni-channel ecosystem approaches, creating service designs, considering voice integration, IoT, wearables, native and desktop integration, developing in-house UXD teams is a huge trend. Folks are looking to compress their agency and vendor ecosystems and bring some of that tribal knowledge and some of that tribal culture in-house and have it be a little bit more aligned. Continuous improvement is also a key trend. User-centered design thinking processes that are also coupled with agile design methodology and iterative product design processes really help to drive that continuous improvement. And of course, personalization, predictive experiences, individual personalization, and then also setting up environments that enable personalization, but also offering customization tools for people who use your experience where they can personalize that experience themselves, where it's not necessarily based on a behavior or a lookalike modeling or machine learning algorithm. So good experience design creates value. The goal of experience design is to create solutions that are optimized for your users, which ultimately provides value for the organization. And so there are three major buckets there. So cost effectiveness is one way that good product design creates value. So there was a study done by Impact that titled The Business Value of UX in late 2019. And a lot of these metrics are taken directly from that study. And so that Impact study showed that good UX design cuts support costs by 90%, not a lot of engineering redos, and developer rework time cut by 50%. And for every $2 that you spend on good UX, you can yield $100. I mean, so that's a pretty good return on investment there. As far as revenue generation is concerned, almost 70% of users leave sites due to bad experience, and optimized e-commerce sites sell 70% more products than non-optimized e-com sites, and over 40% of customers turn to a competitive experience after having a bad experience on a platform. Good UX makes customers 22% less likely to switch. Of course, Airbnb, a pretty sharp brand, attributes its $10 billion valuation to good UX design. And Amazon funds, another pretty sharp company, funds UX design $100 to zero over advertising. So they see experience design and customer experience, customer obsession, as Jeff Bezos likes to call it, as more important than the bully pulpit of advertising. So some product design success factors that'll help you set up a good product design team are design thinking culture, which is really centered around user satisfaction, human-centered design, organic collaboration, and effective communication. Of course, that design thinking culture is also driven by the iterative design process, incremental optimization, also leveraging agile design methods, and being really user research driven. Of course, federated processes at the enterprise level help you to unlock really the value for an organization through those federated processes, empathetic product development processes, design and development processes, and established UI toolkits and established UI libraries really kind of help things to stay aligned within the same design system. And of course, good old-fashioned return on investment. We can't get too far away from that. So as we mentioned in the last slide, good design is cost effective. It drives brand differentiation, drives go-to-market velocity, and helps with customer acquisition, retention, and loyalty, all very important metrics. So at Apex, we respond to some of those market trends and what some of our clients asks with this suite of capabilities. And you'll find that a lot of agencies across the space and a lot of really strong in-house teams, generally have this mix of capabilities stood up. So product design and visual design, user research, the ability to strategize and create nimble playbooks. Of course, product management is a strong component of these capabilities, testing, analytics, and insights, and of course, UX content strategy, as opposed to brand storytelling content strategy. But the UX content strategy are actually the words and icons that are within the experience. So how do we go about developing a good UX strategy? What's the first step? How do we break ground? So we first want to start thinking about what some of those cultural elements are to design thinking. What does a design thinking environment look and feel like? So once you've really kind of stood up a design thinking practice, which is product design, you'll find that you'll be able to infuse delight into your products by adding pleasure, flow, and a deeper meaning. You'll be able to more effectively measure UX improvements with metrics-driven business objectives. Of course, everyone in the financial suite will love that. You'll be able to more quickly identify the design maturity of your organization to tailor your approach around certain audiences and segments as they relate to experiences that you want to bring to market. You'll be able to more precisely calculate user frustration costs, which leads to UX debt, and then how your UX team or product design team can return that value. You'll be all about continuously growing the design literacy and the design fluency across the organization, and be able to assess the design capabilities of your team, filling gaps to be able to handle challenges. And so see, these are some of the cultural elements, some of the byproducts of design thinking that you'll want to look for as you're standing up these capabilities. And as well as developing your own product design methodology. Here you'll see the cycle that begins with empathizing with the user, developing research and executing research, and then developing a value prop. And then once you've done that, then getting into ideation and task analysis, what those tasks are, developing personas, wireframes, prototypes, high fidelity and low fidelity mocks, and then what is the handoff ceremony like to engineering and development? What is the overarching enterprise strategy and product roadmap and pipeline? How do you approach testing your products? And then what are the processes in place for development / engineering and iterations for optimization? And so design thinking, a design thinking culture, which puts the user in the center, really which enables you to leverage a methodology like this one to make people's interactions with your complex systems more pleasant, which, hate to use this 90s term, which makes it a little more sticky and they stay in your funnel a little longer. So an approach to getting there is discovery, driving from vision to initiatives. And there are basically, 5 buckets here along that continuum. So the first piece is, figuring out what is the future state of your vision. What's your current state? You would assess your current state and then allow that current state to inform the way forward for what the future state vision will be. What are the priorities? What are the top business priorities that we want to focus on as an organization as it relates to product design? And what are our objectives? And who owns it? Who is defining those objectives? What does that cross-functional group look like? And then, measures. How do we prove that we were successful? What are those KPIs? Generally, those KPIs are levels of engagement, onboarding, folks becoming champions of your brand, and referrals. And then, of course, cost reduction. And then initiatives, the engine. What is the portfolio of work? And so as we're driving across the discovery journey, these are some of the phases that we'll need to go through to drive from vision to initiatives. Now, the forum that we use to drive vision through to initiatives is generally a series of UX strategy workshops. And in a UX strategy workshop, you're looking for real world strategies that will become your playbook. And so through this experience, we want to lay the foundation, drive transformation, your product design group should be one of the nodes, one of the hubs for innovation within an organization. And then, how do we overcome design obstacles? And then, what are those right plays? How do we call the right plays out of that playbook? How do we identify strengths and weaknesses in the organization, playing to our strengths and upgrading areas where we might be a little weaker? And so again, the UX strategy workshop is that forum where we work out a lot of those ideas going from vision to initiative when we're looking to stand up a design thinking culture. And of course, the playbook is how we execute against all those learnings that we were able to surface during those workshop sessions. Here you can see some of the activities and deliverables that take place during that forum, that workshop session. So obviously we want to develop a product design methodology. We talked about that. We want to develop a communications design framework. How do we socialize and evangelize and have our findings ratified at the highest level within an organization? That kind of takes place within that framework. How do we develop a UXD maturity model on how to scale? And then, of course, developing a user-centered design thinking methodology that is coupled with our product design methodology. And then, of course, what is our validation model? And then all those learnings then populate the playbook where we create a current state. You want to create a current state baseline, a future state vision, a maturity model. What is your empathy and definition approach and your design system development approach? And, you know, all the way down the line to voice of the customer and operational and cultural best practices. Those are some of the things that you want to have answered in that UXD playbook that you then execute against your strategic visions. So we've talked about some trends and some metrics. We've talked about standing up, executing a playbook through strategic workshopping. And now how do we really kind of make it real with the team? So the last phase is really kind of, or working on a dual path, but you certainly want to be able to build out that internal product design team, which actually becomes the engine for the tribal knowledge of your design thinking culture, and also becomes the engine for the tribal culture itself around design thinking. So you need a product design talent acquisition approach. You certainly want to use a dedicated, efficient process to deliver UXD talent. The first phase is obviously assessment, requirements gathering to customize your product design, talent acquisition process, and prioritize functionalities and develop your plan to design, deploy, and maintain. And so the first piece is assessing requirements for the composition of the team. Secondly, you want to execute in the design, deploy, maintain phase, which are kind of collapsed together. You want to execute iterations that incrementally add features to this process. You want to maintain a relevant candidate pipeline and prioritize for future hiring cycles based on joint discovery and results attained through your assessment phase. And of course, you want to keep that loop open for feedback during each hiring cycle to increase the assurance that requirements are being met that you outlined in the assessments phase. And of course, optimization of this talent acquisition approach is to evaluate the performance of each hiring cycle and optimize deployment activities as necessary. And deployment can occur at the completion of all process configuration. So the idea is to set up a dedicated, federated, efficient approach to assessing, customizing requirements, maintaining a pipeline, and then measuring yourself against some of those metrics that you put in place for the assessment phase to see how well your approach is working. Then you want to have a dedicated vetting, evaluation, and management component within that design, deploy, and maintain piece. So you want to collaborate with HR, legal, product, design, development. It's all cross-functional. This approach will make sure that you enable a sustainable and scalable talent acquisition model. So the first piece is to really kind of sit down with your dedicated recruitment mechanism, whether that's internal HR or working with a partner like Apex. And then you want to collaborate on what that custom solution will look like. Some of the things we talked about on the last slide. I'm going to take a quick drink here. You want to use your playbook as criteria to develop tribal knowledge and culture through team composition. Again, a lot of those concepts were laid out in the playbook, and you want to make sure you're hiring against some of those concepts with people that are bringing those skill sets to bear for you, which will build that tribal knowledge and culture within your design thinking organization. And when it comes to candidate evaluation, this is where the rubber really kind of hits the road, obviously. So, I mean, you figure out how many interviews you need. I think 2 or 3 are enough. Of course, portfolio evaluation is key when you're evaluating product designers, UX designers, and visual designers. Obviously looking for that clean, minimalist look and feel, that Swiss design style from a aesthetic perspective. But more importantly, you're looking for the whole design thinking process to be on full display, and what their role was in the process. So you're looking for empathizing, ideation, research work, testing, wireframes, prototypes, both high fidelity and low fidelity, as well as the creation of personas. So you want to see all those activities on display within a use case, within a portfolio. And then, of course, you can always implement a product design skill test as well, an exercise, all of which can be facilitated by your dedicated product design recruiters or your third-party partner like an Apex. Your selected candidates can then be onboarded and added to the team. And then, of course, performance measurement and process optimization should be all part of that mix to make sure that everything is aligned there. And lastly, you know, when you're looking to build out the team, which are going to be really the engine to drive your design thinking culture within your organization, you have to remember that product designers, UX designers, visual designers, UX researchers, they're in high demand right now. This is a highly sought after candidate pool for some of the very reasons that I laid out in the short video that I showed early on. Is that, again, you know, we're going through the greatest demographic shift in history, and millennials and Gen Zers, about 200 million total, are, you know, really require a little bit more from their brands around digital experience. And rightfully so. I mean, with all the platform convergence that's taken place. And so a lot of brands are rushing, as I mentioned in the video, to future-proof against that demographic shift. So your dedicated product design recruiters also have to play the role of brand storytellers during this process to passionately convey the organization's message to candidates, which hopefully will enhance consideration. And part of that message, excuse me, get a little dry throat here, should be the professional growth opportunities, that they'll be also working in a highly collaborative environment, practicing human-centered design thinking skills at a high level, and working on next-gen US projects. Those are all great enhancers to be able to win in the battle for top product design talent, which is what organizations will need in order to stand up that design thinking culture, in addition to a solid, cogent, yet nimble playbook that was based upon best practices and also strategic workshopping around product design. So what does it all mean in summation? What does all this mean? Couple things, you know, maybe five. The strategic purpose of human-centered product design is to meet two goals: the business goals of the organization responsible for the experience, and also the goals of the people using the experience. Secondly, good human-centered design can drive real business value for organizations, while friction-filled experiences very often lead to UX debt. Design thinking culture begins with the product design group, obviously, and we talked about how to stand that group up through strategic workshopping, playbooking, and standing up a team. And so the design thinking culture starts with that group, but it should be evangelized throughout the entire organization. And we cover that in your communications design piece within your playbook. And of course, without federated product design processes that have been ratified at the highest levels possible, it's going to be difficult to launch and scale internal design capabilities. And so as high as you can get this team ratified, and then really, you know, around that ratification of that playbook, it'd also be great, you know, maybe have a ceremony or an unveiling with those high level individuals. Really kind of push things forward for you, doing some of that heavy lifting. And of course, a strategic product design UXD playbook that's coupled with a repeatable talent acquisition and onboarding model will enable sustainable design, will enable a sustainable design thinking culture. So that's all I got. I think I got it all in my 30 minutes. and looking forward to hopefully interacting with you guys in the future. Thank you very much. I'm David Muhammad, as I mentioned, Director of Digital Solutions with Apex Systems, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and would love to engage with you. Thank you.